right. Hey guys, happy Friday. It's Hot Seat Friday. We are doing something totally different today. I brought Emma Frowing on here. Emma is a client of mine and actually now the assistant coach in my coaching academy and a big part of my team. And so we had this idea that, well, Emma has been saying for a while, like she asks me questions every now and then, like, oh, explain this, or how do you do this, or how do you think like that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I never thought to share that. And so we just came up with this idea, like, why don't you just hot seat me? Like, we'll just hop on, you can ask whatever you want. She has not prepared me, so I've got my fingers crossed. And we're just gonna dive in. So I'm gonna just hand it over to Emma. Do you want anyone to ask questions at all, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. If they have a question, they should totally pop it in
Okay,
the chat. I have a few prepared.
Oh, perfect. And if you just have a question as we're going, we may or may not get to it. I may get to it later. Emma may get to it later, but we will try. So if you have any questions, pop them in the comments. Even if you're watching the replay, and if you have anything to share, throw them in here. And if you're enjoying this, let us know. Put some likes, some hearts, some comments so that we know that you would like more of this. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Emma.
Awesome. I'm so excited for this morning because, what I have found most valuable as I've worked with you more closely and been in your space is really getting inside your brain to like understand how you think and how you operate. So that's kind of what I was hoping to do for everyone today, is ask some questions to get inside your mind. And so the first question I have is around like how rapidly you make decisions. I notice that you just make decisions rapidly. Like even if we're on the phone and we're in the middle of something, you're like, we should do that. And like, we do it. Like the whole live that we did, we just went live. We just decided to do it. So I feel like that maybe comes from a ability to trust yourself, like this strong foundation of self-trust. So I wonder how did you create that? Like, how did you create this urgency in decision-making and this relationship of self-trust with yourself that lets you act so urgently and rapidly?
How did I create that? That's an interesting question. You're right. I do take action quickly. And I do, it's a fundamental belief that I have that the universe has my back. I mean, I just always feel that way. And because of that, I'm not afraid to fail or, mess up or have something not be perfect. And I will say that in the past, like everybody, I've had those moments where, I've overthought something or, pulled back and didn't take action, like didn't follow my intuition. And those are always the times where later I'm like kicking myself. Right. And so I think I've learned from that. And also I just believe that the work that I've done to really, I thought, you guys know, I follow a lot of Esther and Abraham, the teachings of Abraham, and really like that foundation of trusting, and also Louise Hay, she was a big part. Come here, baby. She was a big part of that for me early on. I got introduced to, You Can Heal Your Life and other works by like Ian Van Zandt and Abraham, like all of this, I started reading, in my like maybe early 20s. So it's been like 2 decades of me really having this stuff practiced, and just getting to a place where I just trust that everything will work out, even if it doesn't. Like I just am a big believer we can course correct, but let's just go.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and so another question is around your legacy. Like what is your big vision, your vision for the legacy you want to leave? Like, where are you going? What's your final destination?
There's no final destination, right? Like I couldn't even, if there's a final destination, I don't even think I could dream big enough if there's a final destination. But so to me, they're like almost 2 questions. Like, what is your big vision and what is like the legacy? like, I know that I want people to say, like, in terms of legacy, when I think of my daughter, I think of my family or people that I've impacted, I definitely want people to say, like, she was courageous, and that almost makes me want to cry, right? Because there was a time in my life where I wasn't. And so to say, Jessica was courageous enough to just go out there, to put herself out there, to be seen, to take risks. And because of that, that opened the door for us, it allowed me to like take a chance, and, and I also want people to say like, wow, she did not let herself be defined by, what she was born into or the things that happened to her and the tragedies. She was really able to take that and recreate it into anything that she wanted. She was known for transformation. And that's important to me because I believe that that is how other people then see that it's possible for them, because that's really what was the catalyst for me believing in the area that I grew up in, and the things that I was going through with lots of childhood trauma and just love, but also lots of trauma. But seeing that other people outside of my circle were doing certain things, it allowed me to believe that it was possible for me. So that's a lot of what I'm driven by. And I also, in terms of like, what's the big vision? I mean, my overall vision is that like the work that I do and the people that I impact with the work that I do, and you and my clients and my greater community, that because I am an example of how you can create any change or transformation that you want by the way that you think and the things that you believe, and intentionally manifesting, that then other people are able to do that. You, other clients, people watching this live, and that then they extend out into their communities. And really, it's just a ripple effect of people being really personally responsible for whatever it is that they want to create, taking it on themselves and not being a victim to circumstance, not being controlled by environment, but being able to get grounded and realize the power that you actually have, regardless of what's happened in the past, regardless of where you are now. And when you take responsibility for that, you're also taking responsibility for your energy, for, the words that you use, and taking responsibility for it all. I mean, I call myself out all the time in my family, to my daughter, almost on a daily basis. I will call myself out, so it's like personal responsibility is really important to me. And it doesn't mean you do everything yourself. To be personally responsible for what you want to cause or create in the world also means you're responsible for like putting a team in place. You hear me talk about this a lot. A team in your family, a team in your business, or whatever it is that you want to do. Like locking arms with other people and just doing whatever it takes to be what it is that you want in the world. I mean, that's the kind of world that I want to see. And so I just believe that, it's just a fundamental belief that you've got to be whatever it is that you want.
And why do you think that there is this like universal avoidance of taking responsibility? Well, I guess one, do you think there is in our society? And why do you think that is?
I think it can be painful to say I'm responsible for this. I mean, I guess we could get deep, but I mean, if we went really deep in terms of like a metaphysical sense, I mean, there's a belief, and not everybody believes this, and that's okay. But in the things that I read and study, and that I truly believe in my heart and with my God, like there is a belief that we choose what we come into. And so therefore, in some way, our soul is manifesting the experiences that we're having on earth. And I think that can be hard for people to like, wait a minute, I'm not responsible for being sexually molested. I'm not responsible for, being in poverty or having, alcoholic parents or whatever. And yeah, the human you is clearly not responsible for that. That's not what this is about. But there's another part of our existence that we really just don't understand. right? Like everybody tries to figure it out, right? And people have different beliefs, but knowing that we only use a small capacity of our brain, and knowing that, and we've got to know this by now, that we are like spiritual beings having a physical experience. So just knowing that, we've got to be open to the fact that it's very possible that our souls have chosen what we've come into. And we get to ask ourselves, my client, who Danielle, I'm super proud of her, because she came to this realization on a call that we had months ago, and she just put together this show called Life is Happening for Me. And I'm actually doing a show right now called Not Born to Be Average. And so the conversation has come up with almost every person I've interviewed who has these exceptional lives, is like at some point in their life, they realized that whatever trauma, whatever pain, whatever breakdown was happening in their life, it was happening for them. And so, yeah, like personal responsibility gets weaved into that. If you can say, well, how is this happening for me? Not excusing anyone or, anything like that, or letting people off the hook, so to speak. But there's something really empowering about being able to claim whatever is happening to you, and to shift from being a victim of it to like, how is this happening for me? And how can I now take this and make something positive or powerful, or something out of this that I can go and teach and support others with, or whatever you end up doing with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And when you were talking about that, you were about like holding yourself personally responsible. You said you call yourself out on it all the time, like around your daughter. What's that actually look like? Like, what do you mean what do you actually do when you call yourself out?
For example, like, I might say to Lily, you know what, I was really short with you this morning. And she might say, because my daughter takes personal responsibility. I mean, we just teach our kids by the way that we are. So she might say to me, well, I know, but I should have had my stuff ready or whatever. And I say to her, but I'm personally responsible for losing my temper, like being short. That is never your fault. Yes, you're personally responsible for the fact that we had a schedule and you didn't have your stuff, and so then we got rushed. But you're not responsible for the way I react. Like, that is not your responsibility. And that's really important. I need her to know that, and I tell her all the time, just because we're grown-ups doesn't mean that we have it right all the time, or that we, I explained to her, when mommy was a young girl, there were lots of times I didn't feel safe. And so I've still brought into me as an adult some like reactions, that have me like protect myself, so I explain it to her in the way that she can understand it, because I never, ever want her or my husband, anybody that I'm in any kind of relationship with, my friends, my team members, I never want anyone feeling like they are responsible for my actions, my reactions, my emotions. They might trigger something in me, but that's not your responsibility. It's mine.
Right. Yeah. And you also mentioned that you weren't always this self-confident person. And this is where I think it's really helpful to see, like, sometimes we look at you and you're just ironclad superwoman. So could you take us to a time when that wasn't true, when you did lack self-confidence, a time where you had maybe like the most negative or uncertain mindset, and like what you were going through and how you shifted out of it in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time in my early 20s, and it just so happens that this is the time when I was overweight, everything was just reflecting itself on the outside. I was just really self-destructive. And if I think about it, I'm not really sure exactly where, what the exact cause. I mean, I had like a lot of you, I've had lots of trauma growing up, right? Lots of violence, poverty, lots of secrets, lots of death, lots of death in my family at a young age, abuse, so a lot. So there's no way that by the time you're in your teens or you're young, adult years, that's not going to come out somehow, right? That's not going to manifest in you. I think Emma's frozen. That's not going to manifest somehow in you. You were frozen for a minute. But so what I was saying is there's no way that when you go through that, unless your family has somehow put you in some type of therapy as a young person, which that was never my case, but there's no way that you get to your teen years or your young adult years, that's not going to manifest itself, right? In fears, in self harm. And, that's really what was happening in my life. We lost our host.
I know, I made sure my internet was good. I wanted to move
and so that was just starting to unfold in my life, right? And I was seeking validation outside of myself. It's also a time where I was really realizing that I thought differently than most people. This is important. Do you want to go out? Go ahead, honey. Go ahead. I really realized that I thought very differently than most of the people that I was around. I already was having that capacity to think in a different way, and to have desires and want things differently. And I was already reading and things like that. And so I think what was starting to happen is instead of trusting, Rosie, come, instead of trusting that which was happening. And I think this is natural, right? Like I was like 23, 24, maybe it was right before my mother died, a couple years before. And I think instead of trusting that that was, I was having this awakening, so to speak, I started to judge myself, right? And so I started to try to fit in with everyone else. Honey, can you shut that, please? Can you take her out and shut the door? I'm sorry. Lily has off school today, so we're a little bit out of, honey, I'm on the phone. Yeah, on the video. So, so that was just starting to manifest itself in me, not knowing how I fit in and trying to fit in, right? And so you just being in really unhealthy relationships, just staying out late, drinking a lot, eating bar food every night, like just really, and when I look at the pictures, like my face was bloated, my skin was bad. I just was not happy. I just was not. And the tricky part of that is I was also living in a family where people were self-medicating. Right. And so like nobody was noticing that there was anything wrong with me. I was just hanging out with them. Fitting myself. I was always fitting myself in, right? Like everyone in my family smoked and all my friends. And so I was fitting myself in. I was doing what they were doing, but it never felt like me. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you're just doing stuff, being in relationships, and it doesn't feel like you, but you're like going through the motions. And I just remember clearly sitting at my dining room table one day and just being like having an awareness that wasn't me, but not really knowing how to get to me, and so there was several years bound up in that where I was just in this vicious cycle. And I talk about it in my Get Set method. I have something called the tricky triad, where you just get in this cycle of thinking certain things, and then you're around other people who reinforce those thoughts and beliefs, and then you're using the same language and you start to believe that those things are the truth, and they're not. They're just that experience. So it wasn't until I was able to get myself out of those environments that I was able to see that there was another way to be. For me, the big turning point was my mom dying suddenly in a car accident. That was literally a moment sitting on the bathroom floor sobbing, where I was like, holy shit, like, this is it. I either get myself together now, or this is either how I'm going to live out my life, or my life is just going to be, it could be over in one day, like just suddenly. So, I think we all have moments like that in our life. Like I had that moment at the table. It's like a little whisper, but I still didn't do anything about it. It wasn't until this big thing happened in my life. It doesn't have to be that way, Yeah.
Well, and then what did you do? So it took that kind of explosion in your life. And this is before, like, I know the whole Get Set method came out of your practice what you just created in your life. But at that time, you didn't have Get Set, you didn't have the labels, you didn't have the terminology. So what did you do, as you said, to get to
I took action. That's where I started getting urgent in my life. That's where I started getting urgent. I mean, within a couple of weeks, I quit my job, which was an amazing job. But listen, my position was like an executive assistant, right? Something I'm totally not cut out for. But it was a six-figure job, believe it or not. And my boss had kept throwing money at me. I had wanted to quit before, and I kept staying for the money, and we traveled, and I loved going to Paris, and but the job was just so not me. I wasn't cut out for it. My boss was a real asshole. I mean, like it had every recipe for like, for like, if I stayed, just being miserable years later, being in that cycle of people that I see all the time who like stayed for the money or stayed for whatever, and they thought it was going to get better, and it just gets worse. And so that was my moment where I was just like, I'm done. I mean, I left the money. I pursued being an entrepreneur, which was scary as hell for me because I had no examples of it. There was nobody in my life who had ever done anything like that. And really, I was just winging it. I didn't have a coach at the time. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I went for it. And that was 16 years ago. And my life just every single year started up leveling. My urgency just got turned on. It was like, life is now, like no more like worrying about what people think about me, no longer like feeling weird about talking about like the stuff that I talk about, like no more hiding, right? Like no more trying to fit in or dumb myself down. I don't mean to be like, this is not a knock on anyone, but for a lot of my younger years, I acted like I brought myself down. Mm-hmm. Can you guys get that? Like I brought myself down to the caliber of other people so that they didn't feel bad. I wanted to make them feel good. I was not comfortable being powerful. Like I didn't know what to do with that. And there's a lot of people who are like that. There's a lot of people and women that I coach that have that same experience. What did I say in our private group the other day? I said, I was just kidding. And like, if you don't like bad language, you don't want to hear this. But I said something like, I feel like I need to do a workshop called Wake the Fuck Up to Your Worth, right? Wake the fuck up to your worth, because there's so many people still as adults living a life where like they don't feel worthy. They don't feel worthy to get, and that's how I was feeling then. And so, yeah, it created urgency for me.
And so when you get that urgent and you're building $1 million business, you work from home, like how do you turn it off and come home, right? Like to take, like, or do you, like in terms of like, are you
what off?
The mindset of urgent action towards this professional vision, or maybe it's not divided for you. Maybe it's just one vision of life.
For me, working on my business is not like busy urgent. Like I don't run around the house like, oh my God, I got to get into my office and I got to do this. And I mean, there's moments like right now I'm putting together a show and I'm training the sales team and I've got a new admin. So I am like in a stretchy time, especially with my husband being gone for 3 weeks for work. So there's that, but I have zero, like, I don't have any fear or tension or scarcity around like what's manifesting in my business. I just know that it's happening. So I focus on the vision and then I just chunk down and I just focus on what I'm working on right now. Like I'm not trying to manage every single thing in my business right now. I'm just focused like on 2 things, coaching my team and interviewing for my show. Like that's it. So it's easy for me to turn off at the end, like when I'm done, it's easy, I'm going to Zumba today at 10. I'll come back. I'll do an interview. Lily and I are going shopping. We're having Halloween movie night starting at 5. I mean, like I focus on the important stuff that moves the needle forward, and I do not get distracted by busy work. It just so I don't ever feel stressed in that kind of way.
And why is that? Is it around boundaries because you've set really solid boundaries for yourself? Like,
I really believe, honestly, it's not about any kind of tactic. And I have those, right? And I can share those, and I have been sharing those this week in the group.
mm-hmm.
But it's really about, I just have a confidence in knowing that my company is going where it's going. And so I don't feel like I need to push anything. Does that make sense? Like I feel like I get to do my part. I'm only one person, right? God is doing, his part. My team is doing their part, which is, so I'm in a growth period right now where, you could get stressed out. You could go into breakdown.
Yeah.
And things are going to not be smooth the whole time. I mean, that's just part of it. But there's just an underlying confidence that comes with being hooked into your vision, being really grounded in it, knowing who you are, having that clarity of vision, and really just having the mindset that I have really built over the last, couple decades. I mean, that's just solid. So, you came out with me for my, for when I competed and ended up turning pro. You came out to New Jersey, New York, wherever we were. And, one of the things I remember thinking was like, whatever happens, I'm totally cool. Like I know I'm going to turn pro. Like and whatever, I can't, I know it's going to happen when it happens because I'm going to continue to keep going. And so I wasn't attached to it happening that weekend, although I saw it happening. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's how I am with the business too.
Yeah, I feel like that comes back to where we started around the trust conversation, where it's like releasing some of this control, this illusion of control in honor of trust of universe, trust of higher power, trust of your God.
Which really, that's where all your control really is. It's like you can't control any of the other things, but you can control the way you're being. You can control the things you're focused on, right? In the meantime, you can control, your time, right? Like so many people are like spinning, just with this false sense of accomplishing things because they're running around doing all of these things and none of it is really moving the needle for what's important in their life. And so those are the things that you can control, right? Like focus on controlling the way that you think, first of all. And what happens as a result of managing the way you think is that then you're managing your feelings, because what you focus on and think about is actually what sparks your feelings. And so a lot of people are saying, oh, like I'm really emotional, or I'm an empath, or okay, those are all labels, but really those emotions come from whatever you're deciding to focus on. Mm-hmm. So I really start with that. That's just my belief, and that's just how I operate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and my last question, I thought this was a really awesome question in Zone, so I wanted to give it to you. Like, what do you want to be asked that you're never asked?
That was a question that they asked Janda. Oh my God. I don't even know. What do I want to be asked that I am never asked? Gosh, I wish you would have prepped me for that one. Let's ask the audience. See if any, who's still on. You guys put a question in here. What do you want to ask that no one has ever asked me? Let me think about that. What do I want to be asked that I'm never asked? Do I ever feel lonely? I think the reason I bring this up is because I was talking to somebody yesterday that I was interviewing, and she and I have been entrepreneurs for a long time. And I remember calling her up on the phone years ago when I had my fitness center. And it was at a time where I had built my team and I was really like stepping out of being like the face of the fitness center. I really was building it up. I knew that I was going to sell it. And I was like, I felt completely, let's just put it this way. People were upset. And I guess when looking back, I think they felt, left out because I was growing. And so, but what was happening was like somebody on my team who I gave a lot of responsibility to and put in a really powerful position, things went sideways, and there was all this behind the scenes stuff that was going on where I felt really betrayed. And I just remember like calling my friend Laura up at that time and saying, wow, I had no idea like that being an entrepreneur, being a boss and all that was going to be so lonely. And I remember her saying like, oh yeah, like it totally is. Does it matter how many people you're surrounded by? Like how much your family supports you? There is a part of doing this that can feel very lonely. And that's why and I have those moments, I have those moments where you feel lonely or you feel misunderstood or you feel, and like, see, this is, you can let yourself go down that road, right? Because that's where managing the way that you think comes in. But there is an aspect to that. And I know that it is true for many entrepreneurs that I talk to. That is why it's so important to keep yourself in communities with other entrepreneurs. Like now, like most of my closest friends are all entrepreneurs and women who've been even more successful than me, because then I can reach out and then you don't have that feeling. But the reason I share it is because I don't want anyone who is feeling like that to think that like you're the only one feeling that way. There is that feeling as you're building, because a lot of the times in the beginning, that's really what you're solely focused on. And it's all coming through you. And the truth is you're going to have clients, you're going to have team members and stuff that leave you, that, turn on you, that, like things are going to happen like that. And so you have got to get so strong in who you are so that doesn't rattle you. And with each year, and I'm looking at the time we're over, but with each year, that's gotten easier for me. But there was a time in one of my first businesses where that was really tough.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Jessica. This has been a lot of fun. I've been excited to interview you. And
Sasha said, what's a dream you have that you aren't working on yet? What's a dream I have that I'm not working on yet? Well, I have this vision of having a, God, I don't even know how to put it into words. I see myself doing something like a modern day Esther Hicks, like sitting or standing on a stage with like hundreds, thousands of people. And I don't want to use the word channeling. It's not that, but guiding people through like a manifestation rampage. Like there's something to that. And with that also, like I've had a vision of like having a university, like a mindset university, a manifesting university. There's something in that vision of being able to go out and really plant that out in the world for this modern age.
Yeah. I know you've been talking about that with the vision.
So it's, Emma, we're losing you, but it's 7:38. So let's log out And I just want to thank you, Emma, for doing this. I hope it was supportive for you guys. Let us know in the comments if you enjoyed watching, and we'll do this again maybe next month with maybe a certain topic. I would love it if maybe you guys talked about or put in the comments. Maybe we'll do a poll of like what topic people want to hear more about in terms of like doing the hot seat. So thank you, Emma. We're gonna log out.
This has been great, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.